Hello everyone. So someone left a comment asking that I make a video on the novella The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy. And I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to just reflect more broadly on what Russian literature has taught me about death and in turn about life. So the way this video will work is I'll share a broad lesson and then I'll get into the specific works that taught me that and why I think everyone should read them. Now, as somebody that became acquainted with these texts as a teenager and am now rereading them in my 20s, I think it is just so important for young people to think about death. I think that these texts have really provided me with a guide on how to live a meaningful life, and I don't think I would be the person I am without them. So without further ado, the first lesson is that when you die, or when it comes time for you to die, you're going to care way more about the relationships you have than about whatever material success you've managed to acquire. And the main works that taught me that are first The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Tolstoy, which is about an aging bureaucrat who, upon his deathbed, realizes that all the things he's been chasing his whole life, wealth, a good job, a picture-perfect family, have been just so superficial, and he wishes he did things differently. Now, the second work that taught me this lesson is called The Bishop by Anton Chekhov, and Chekhov is totally responding to Tolstoy in this. It's basically the same plot, except the protagonist is a bishop. And I think what Chekhov is trying to tell us with that is that even people that we consider really close to God still have doubts when it comes time for them to die and don't necessarily have the key to leading, a perfect, spiritually fulfilling life. This is a lesson that we all have to learn for ourselves. Now, the next big thing I learned was that it is not for us to judge our fellow man. Now, I know that sounds very biblical, and I'm somebody that really just did not grow up with religion in my life. So for me, this is a lesson I learned through literature. And the main story that taught me this is called God Sees the Truth and Waits. And it's by Leo Tolstoy again. Now, I'm going to spoil the plot here, but if you're somebody who hates spoilers, just skip ahead. So this story is about a man named Aksionov, who is wrongfully convicted of a crime he did not commit, and he spends his whole life in prison. And then he tells this story to somebody, and one of the people listening in happens to be the criminal that committed the crime that he was initially sent to jail for. So he spends his life fantasizing about getting to rejoin his family, about being proven innocent, but the older he gets, the more detached he becomes from that fantasy. He realizes that everyone he's ever loved has probably forgotten him, and he becomes reconciled to his fate. And there's this beautiful scene that I just want to read out, which is when the true criminal begs Aksionov for his forgiveness. So, when Aksionov heard him sobbing, he too began to weep. "God will forgive you," said he. "Maybe I am 100 times worse than you." And at these words, his heart grew light, and the longing for home left him. He no longer had any desire to leave the prison, but only hoped for his last hour to come. I'm fighting back tears as I read that, and I cried at this last night when I was reflecting on what I wanted to share with you all. What a beautiful passage. What a powerful story. I think everyone needs to read it. I think this should be taught in every school. The last lesson I learned is not moral or philosophical, but more historical. And that is that death camps did not begin or end with the Holocaust. And I'm here referring to the Gulag of the Soviet Union, but of course there are millions of examples of labor camps across the globe. And just a fun fact, the last of these camps that was specifically for political prisoners was shut down by Mikhail Gorbachev in 1987, so super late. And a bit about the Gulag, these were labor camps across the Soviet Union that they sent convicts to, and a lot of the time these people were wrongfully committed, or they were tried for political crimes. So anybody that spoke out against the state or was related to somebody that spoke out against the state was sent to these camps. And although they were labor camps in title, the conditions were so, so horrible that countless people died. Now, the story I want to recommend to you all, it's actually a collection of short stories. It's called Kolyma Tales, and it's by Varlam Shalamov. And if you don't know, Kolyma is just a very, very cold place where they had one of these camps. And his stories are all these vignettes that are told so precisely with such minimalistic prose about what life was like in the camps. Shalamov himself was a camp survivor, so I highly recommend those stories. So Gulag memoirs are something I've spent a really long time reading, and they've just given me so much perspective on how horrifying prisons just as a concept are, and just how many people have been wrongfully convicted for crimes they did not commit, and they will just never see justice. And of course, the lack of accountability and transparency in authoritarian regimes, and just the scale of these wrongdoings is so vast, we will just never be able to calculate it. And all of these lives needlessly lost, it just makes me makes me feel very humble, and grateful for the life that I lead. And I know that people have different perspectives on perspective. They'll say things like, well, thinking about starving children, I don't know where, it doesn't help me because I have to lead my life. And personally, I've always found perspective to be helpful. I feel like my worldview has changed as a result of really immersing myself in these Gulag stories. I think especially my relationship to food has changed, because a lot of these writers talk about, the starvation. And so every time I eat anything, I think I just pause and I feel so grateful for that food. And the same thing goes for having shelter. Like when I get into my cozy bed at night, I always just feel so grateful. And I know that that's not something that I would necessarily be aware of if I didn't spend so much time reading these stories. So like I said, I feel like I'm the person I am because of some of these tales, and I think we all have something to learn from writers about these topics, about death, about how to lead a good, meaningful life. And like I said, this video was inspired by a request. So if you have a request for a video you'd like me to make, please let me know. There's a high probability I'll make it. And yeah, thanks for listening. I hope that you go ahead and read even one of these stories. So thank you so much, and have a lovely day. Bye-bye.